guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Julie. I do everything from book reviews to tarot, and if you're returning, I'm so glad I haven't scared you off. Now what are we talking about today? Today we're going to be talking about Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. Now this book came out in January of this year, 2022. This is Tan's debut novel, and it is based in Chinese mythology, more specifically the tales of Chang'e, or the moon goddess herself. When the novel opens, we are following Xingyin, or the titular character, the daughter of the moon goddess. Now we know that Xingyin was born into exile with her mother on the moon, and we know that her mother's exile was owing to the fact that she stole the elixir of immortality from the emperor. But we know little else about the story, and frankly, the exile doesn't affect Xingyin much. She lives in peace and tranquility with her mother, and although rumors abound about, the origins of their exile, Xingyin does thrive in this environment for many years. Now, as Xingyin gets older, she begins to develop these powers and magic within her. And we'll learn later that all immortals of this realm develop these powers, but Xingyin was never taught about any of this from her mother. So one day she kind of tries to learn more about this feeling within her and tries to draw it out of herself. And in that process, the power that's felt on the moon raises the alarm bells from the celestial kingdom, and Chang'e realizes that her daughter risks discovery with her in exile. So Chang'e forces Xingyin to flee the moon, and through a calamitous series of events, she ends up in the claws of the Celestial Kingdom, aka the same place that forced her mother into exile. And now Xingyin must live as a stranger among these people because she fears that if her mother's true identity is revealed, that Chang'e will be punished by the Celestial Emperor for lying about Xingyin's existence. From this point, really onward, Xingyin's entire motivation is to return to her mother and, hopefully, if she can, free her mother from exile. And everything that Xingyin does is motivated by this goal. Now, I'm not going to be going through the plot beat by beat because A, that would lead to spoilers, and I'm trying to keep it spoiler-free, but also B, at that point, I would just make this into an audiobook. But honestly, I'm just so excited about this book that I wanted to share everything with you, so it's a little bit of a struggle. Keeping this as abridged as possible, I will say that Xingyin gets the opportunity to study alongside Crown Prince Li Wei as his study companion, and through this opportunity, she develops her magic and strengthens her fighting abilities until she begins to get recognized by the Celestial Army as a potential recruit. Not only does a romance begin to form between Xingyin and Li Wei, which is an aspect of this book I greatly appreciated because I love me a good romance, but also, as Xingyin gets more involved in the army, she's taken away on all manner of battles and adventures with really visually captivating beasts and just really well choreographed, well thought out fight scenes. It's a fantasy novel through and through, obviously, but more than that, it's a classic hero's journey. In the About the Author section of the book jacket, it says that Sue Lynn Tan was greatly influenced by the fairy tales of her childhood, and I believe that. You can see these archetypes here. You have our fearless heroine always charging into battle, united in her heart by a purpose to free her mother, the most noble pursuit, there is. But also it is reminiscent to me of the trials of Hercules, the classic imagery of the brave hero or heroine charging forward into these menacing beasts and getting the best of them with quick wits and the help of friends. There's a very classic element here that I appreciated. One of my initial criticisms was going to be that I felt like our character was a little bit too brave, you know what I mean? I didn't feel enough hesitancy from her, but toward the end of the book, which by the way, I just finished it this morning, this is a fresh review. Toward the end of the book, she says, I was afraid the whole time, and I did things despite my fear. And she sees this as a weak point, but I see it as making her more human and even more relatable. There were times during the week that it took me to read this book that I would draw an inspiration from this character because she She charged forward, no matter the fear in her heart, she charged forward. And I think at the end of the day, even if it may have seemed at the time a little bit unrealistic, it's still an archetype that we can strive for. Bravery is never a bad thing. Speaking of a classical structure, the thing that I appreciated most greatly about this book is that every setup had a payoff. Nothing was introduced in this book without a purpose, and there is a bit of a twist resolution toward the end, but I will say it is the most earned twist I've ever read. And breadcrumbs, if you were paying attention, were left out for you, and you are rewarded for paying attention in this book, which is more than I can say about a lot of the mysteries and things that I've read in the past. I'm not petty enough to name names, but anyway, we always like when you're rewarded for paying attention. Now this book, I may have mentioned in my last video that it is a planned series, a planned duology or series of 2 books. And I was greatly worried because I got so invested in these characters. The characters, I will say, though they are a bit archetypal, are still very, very well written. I understand them to a great degree. There is nuance to them. And, you know, you get attached to them. I will say this book, my copy is about 498 pages long. It could vary different lengths depending on the format. And it is longer than books that I have read in the past. It's one of the longest books I've probably read, but it did not feel its length. I want more from these characters, and I was worried, guys. I was genuinely like panicked that like there was gonna be this massive cliffhanger and I'd have to wait forever to get to the next book. And on a spiritual level, I don't think I would have handled that well. I'm the type of person who, like, when I saw The Red Wedding back when Game of Thrones was good and didn't break my heart, when I saw The Red Wedding, I couldn't even function for almost a week. Like, I was that heavily invested, and I felt similarly to these characters. But the book does tie up in a very satisfying way, not too cleanly, obviously. There's hints at what may happen in the next book, but I just like that it wasn't too perilous a situation that they ended up in, because I would not have been able to handle it. It is important to me, though, that I keep this review balanced, and this book is not without its criticisms. One of my biggest ones probably lies within the dialogue. Some of it feels a little bit clunky and unnatural, a little bit expositional. There were times when I was reading and I was like, oh, they are explaining to the other character what needs to happen in the plot next, and it kind of took me out of the book. And this happened like maybe a handful of times, and it was just something that stuck out to me. Another one would probably have to be, there were times when, yes, like the fight scenes were very well choreographed and I understood them for the most part, and I think that they were written very well. But there were times when I didn't quite understand what was happening, and like a battle would end too quickly, and I was like, how did this happen? How did we get from this sentence to this sentence with the resolution happening so quickly? The battles sometimes didn't seem very evenly paced. In particular, I'm not going to get into the details of the fight because spoilers, but there is one particularly powerful mind-controlling entity that Xingyin and the army face that is set up to be this very powerful foe, and the battle does seem pretty hard fought, but I feel like it ends too quickly. So there was a pacing problem there. Like, the foe was built up to be this major thing, and they fought him for a while, but then, like, I don't know, it ended too quickly, too cleanly for me, and that was kind of strange. But again, only a handful of times did I feel this way. On the whole, I thought the battles and fight scenes were very well written and made sense for the most part. I think this book has very rich figurative language, very rich descriptors, and it really helps build the world, but there were times when that seemed to slip. Overall, I greatly enjoyed this book. I'd even put it in the must-read category, and I'd tell you, you know, if you haven't read this book yet, probably stop what you're doing and read it. I feel like not enough people are talking about this, and I'm really excited for the next installment. If you guys have read it, let me know what you think down in the comments, or if you want to read it, let me know what you think. If you like my review here, be sure to like and subscribe. Quick shout out to my patrons, Jash May and Omni-Man is Daddy. Thank you for joining me along the ride and supporting me. If you would like to see what's going on Patreon, links to everything will be below. And thank you so much for coming along the ride. Bye, guys. Oops, I almost forgot to give this book a rating. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. That's all for today.